we want to welcome you to On and Off the Spectrum.
Yes.
And I am Dr. Esty Hess.
And I am Dr. Ann Kirsch, and we welcome you again.
So we have a very, very special guest this evening. It's Dr. Naomi Lewis. Remind me your last name again?
Afriat.
Afriat. Thank you very much, Naomi. And we were so impressed because Naomi happens to be, I would say, a world authority on a very, very topical and challenging subject, which is internet pornography addiction. And so this evening we had so much to talk about the last time we got together that we decided that we needed more time to really explore some of the nuances of the questions that our readers and viewers have brought to our attention. And one of the thoughts that kept coming up is because our podcast is called On and Off the Spectrum, so we deal with a lot of both neurotypical and neurodivergent issues. But there is a difference when you're speaking about a neurodivergent individual who is addicted to the internet, and then particularly when there is a pornographic component to that addiction. And I think there's a different way that you need to approach that treatment plan, and I thought we would start with that part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Dr. Hess. Thank you both for having me here today. It's great to be here again. We had some great conversations last time, and I look forward to some great conversations again today. So talking about the neurodivergent client who is struggling with internet addiction that has a pornographic component, I think it's important for a therapist trying to do the assessment of a client like that with that presentation to really keep in mind what the neurodivergent diagnosis means and how that's going to affect their functioning. People, on the spectrum might struggle with socialization. They might struggle with an intense focus on certain areas that they're very interested in. They might struggle with understanding how to build a romantic relationship. They also might sometimes not understand some of the nuances or maybe the ethical pieces around why pornographic material might be inappropriate. So I think it's really important for a therapist to be understanding of that. And sometimes what to a therapist who works with neurotypical clients might seem like a straightforward pornography addiction, might to someone else who's familiar and is able to see that the person is on the spectrum might not necessarily be that, or it might be, behaviors engaging in pornography. It might not necessarily be the addiction. Remember that people on the spectrum, I don't have to express that to you doctors, is often, there's a certain amount of stimulation, right? There's a certain amount, right? They seek a certain amount of stimulation, and this can be one way of doing that. So I think it's important to not just lump them all together and to be really mindful about where the client's at and what their diagnoses are before you start looking at their sexual functioning and how they might be engaging in this way.
Well, I think you mentioned something about stimulation. I think that there is, for those of our viewership who may not know necessarily the science behind this, there is a chemical in our brain, a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And every time someone will go after like a hit on the internet in general, they're going to get like a squirt of dopamine. And it is somewhat calculated by people who advertise on the internet because they want you to be stuck on that, so you continue to purchase and whatnot. But there is an incessant need to continue to get that kind of feedback to the brain, especially when, for whatever reason, your own chemistry doesn't naturally produce an adequate amount of this very needed neurotransmitter for appropriate regulation and concentration and focus.
Yeah, I think that's actually very relevant. I think, look, all addiction or most addictions engage with that feedback loop of dopamine, and then the dopamine levels dropping, and then that will trigger the seeking of the dopamine rush or the dopamine hit, and then they'll engage in whatever their addiction is, whether it's gambling or shopping or eating or drugs or alcohol,
Or
in order to get
children
that.
with games.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Gaming
Oh,
does that.
the gaming addiction is also very big right now. The gambling addiction is very big right now. I just spoke to
Yes.
somebody who said it's really kind of getting up there. So any addiction will, engages that feedback loop, right? That seeking of the dopamine, getting the dopamine hit, having a little bit of satisfaction, sometimes also raising tolerance and needing more, right, of the dopamine, right? That tolerance level goes up and they need more and more dopamine. So I think it's important. So all addictions will engage with that. I think people on the spectrum sometimes might be using pornography, not necessarily for the dopamine hit, but in order to kind of satisfy the need for, in what in their mind might be a misguided search for a social connection, right? They might be thinking that this is, oh, they're chatting with somebody online. Maybe she really wants to be my friend, right? Instead of kind of like, oh, she's being sexual with me. Maybe she's really interested in me. There might not be that, the understanding always necessarily, right? Or they might not, they're looking for the stimulation, a sexual stimulation they might not get elsewhere, because they might be limited in that way, or they might be not be able to find it because they don't have the social skills. So it is important to understand that there is a difference to that. Right now, when they're engaging, eventually, very often that might be how it starts, and then they end up engaging in that feedback loop again and again, and then they might end up as a real addict. That's possible.
Mm-hmm. Oops, Naomi, you're frozen in time here, just for a second. Oh, there we go. Okay, I came on back.
Yeah. Did I freeze? Oh,
You froze for just a half a moment, but please
sorry.
continue. Yes.
No, what I was saying was that one of the things that we do when we're working with any addict is trying to understand where this came from, right? How did this start, right? Usually there's some kind of traumatic underpinnings to most addictions. But I think that with people on the spectrum, there might be another aspects, right? Something else that led them there. And that's also really important, right? Were they very lonely? Were they numbing the need of loneliness, which is very common in the neurotypical, in the neurotypical population as well.
Yeah.
But the need and their, maybe there was a lack or inability to gain that. You know what I mean? Like the way they got there might have been very different. And because of that, one of the ways that we help people who are addicted become unaddicted, is, if you understand why they got there, helping them develop healthy coping mechanisms, so they don't have to go there again, right? So if somebody was numbing themselves because of some kind of trauma that they went through, processing that trauma and then finding them healthy coping skills, they don't have to go there, right? Somebody who got there because they were lonely or because they were seeking some kind of sexual contact because they couldn't get it elsewhere, because they didn't have the skills, they're not going to be able to stop so easily. And we have to teach them what it is they need to know in order to be able to function in that area, so they then don't need, so that they can be comfortable weaning themselves off that. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge because I'll tell you, a lot of the I'm going to say more men than women, but it's actually in both in both male and female
We're seeing
population.
more and more. Yeah.
They're just very lonely, and it's tough to make any kind of friendships, and it occupies time. There's like, how do I go ahead and occupy time? I had a client recently who was sharing that this individual feels very bad because they don't want to be addicted to technology. They certainly don't want to be addicted in this, into pornographic material. They see an impact in their lives that they don't think as clearly. They aren't as creative as they used to be,
Right.
and so forth.
Right.
But the thought of, so we began to experiment. We're like, all right, what if you, like, say from X to X amount of hours a day, could you just not be on the internet? And he just took a deep breath and said, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, it was an honest answer, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
But it was like, it's a very scary thought, because it's a huge void in people's lives.
And what do I do then? What is he supposed to do then?
Right.
And if it fills a very kind of maybe more underdeveloped void of what in their mind is socialization, where are they going to get the socialization otherwise if they don't get it there?
And it's
Right,
an
maybe
interesting thing to hear you say that, because I've spoken with people of all age groups, who are neurodivergent or not, who have the same issue. It's the, it's the hidden magazines. It's not, and we're talking about this time, not the 1930s or 40s. We're talking about being online, hiding all of this. So the issue also of all this hidden life that's hidden from a spouse, if there is one, friends. What does that do? What, in your experience, does all that hiding do? Because here we're talking about a young person who also feels guilty.
Shame. Yes.
Shame.
A lot of shame, a lot of guilt. Yeah, yeah. And so I think your question kind of really is, goes for, as you said, the neurotypical community and the neurodivergent community. And I think it's one of the big components of this issue is the betrayal and the secrecy around it, which have a lot to do with the shame. And I think, what shame is one of the things that inhibits healthy sexuality, right? People are not able to be their own healthy sexual selves when there's shame involved, right? So let's say there's a young man or young woman and they're finally in a physical healthy relationship because they often feel so much shame because of their past activities potentially. They're not going to be able to explore in a healthy way because there's often like a split or compartmentalization with sexuality and healthy relationships and intimacy. It's all kind of like the wiring is kind of off. So first, I just think that's one piece that I think is important to acknowledge, that it becomes much more difficult for them to be comfortable in their sexuality because in their mind, what fires together wires together, right? Are you familiar with that, right? So in their mind, the sexuality has always been associated with shame and with bad and with guilt and negative feelings. So now you're expecting them to be sexual with somebody in a positive, beautiful, hopeful, positive way. Right. And that's very difficult for them. So that's something that we often then see that becomes that's hard. It's difficult. But I also just think that, secrecy and shame obviously also erodes the trust in a marriage when it comes out or in a relationship, right? The damage of betrayal, that's one of my biggest areas that I focus on in my work in the work that I do is mostly on betrayal, usually women, but not always, or men that have been betrayed by their spouses, either by them watching excessive pornography online and having that affect their lives, or by going outside the marriage and doing all sorts of other things. But the damage of the secrecy and the shame, I'd say there's a few different victims in that. First of all, the person themselves, they're walking around with this big heavy load. It damages their sense of identity and sense of self. Who am I? What am I doing? Right? A lot of times, if they're religious, they might have a religious crisis. I can't stand before God, and whatever religion they practice. Right? I can't stand before God because He can see what I'm doing, and I'm not the person that I'm pretending to be. Right? I'm too dirty. I'm too damaged. I can't do that. Right? There's a split. Like I have my private life that I do all these other things in, and then there's my public life where I'm, this perfect person. Right? So just for the person themselves, it does carrying secrets and shame like that. Is very damaging.
You remind me, I think there was a scene in The Godfather where I remember one of the mob bosses had a mistress and a wife, right?
Right.
And so the wife he could kiss the wife on the mouth.
Yes, I remember that.
Right?
But not the mistress.
But not the mistress because then, he had to delineate in terms of what was like my wife, I can do that because she kisses our children, right? And, this absolute split of division and, comic relief or whatever in the context of a theatrical production. But I am struck also by the damage that pornographic sex, the message that, for example, there is no human that can manifest the speed of satisfaction that a machine can do.
Right. Or
sure.
a hand can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there is an expectation. There is also overuse and then damage to the actual the physiological mechanisms of intimacy. And and then I'm going to overlay one more component, particularly in the neurodiverse community, where a lot of the individuals who I see have a despondency that they never imagine that they're going to ever have the capacity for an intimate relationship.
Yes.
And so they want a sexual release. Forget the dopamine for a second. They just want to feel good for a moment. And this becomes the avenue of a connection, you know.
Right.
Or they decide, I worked with someone quite a while ago who decided that they were asexual because they were too afraid of one, not afraid of the other. And so the middle was, I'm asexual, and then spoke with me about it because they wanted to make sure that they knew what asexual was, even though they'd already decided that they were. And so there was a little bit off, and we had some amazing conversations. You are what you tell yourself a lot of the time, and so it goes just like this conversation for our listeners, all different directions.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump on that for a second, Anne, because hot off the presses, becoming enamored with an AI fantasy partner.
Yeah.
And I have a recent couple where this happened between the man and the AI figure, and the wife feels so betrayed. And he says, I don't know what to do with this, because it's not like a woman, but he wants to have us both. He wants to have his technological mistress and me, and I don't know what to do with. How would you address?
No one knows what to do with it because this is so brand
It's so new. If somebody had told us we're going to be doing this 10 years ago, we'd be having this conversation.
It's really, I think there's a movie called She or Her that's out recently.
That's right.
That's very
It's about that.
But so Naomi, what do you do with a couple comes to you and says that we've discovered, it was a discovery, and it's caused damage in our marriage. My husband is in love with his AI mistress. And I know it's not real, but it is real. It's impacting our marriage. He doesn't want to give her up, but he wants me there, and I don't want to share this part of his sexuality. Does he want
her there in the room with the mistress, the AI mistress, or separate?
Well, that's a good question. I think he is still experimenting with all different kinds of ideas. And the idea appalls her. She doesn't want to lose the marriage. You know, it's a family with children, and how do you address it?
What do you do with that? So I'm going to start to answer that, but I just want, by going back a little bit, right at the beginning of our segment, you asked me about the difference on the neurodivergent and neurotypical community, and then and you said you just touched on something. I think it's important to remember that a lot of the people in the neurodivergent community might not be able to, because they can't pick up the nuances of the interactions and the socialization pieces, they might learn about sexuality from pornography. So they think that whatever they see there is pornography. And by the way, that goes for the neurotypical community as well, a lot, because they don't really very often there's communities or groups that don't receive proper sex education or understanding or guidance around that. So then you'll get a situation, and you know, Esty, I'll get to your answer in a minute. I'm sorry, I'm just backtracking.
No.
And there'll be a situation where they find themselves with, you know, in a physical, real life situation with a partner, and them either treating her like a sex doll or like a pornography actress, because they're thinking, well, the person on the screen wanted that, or did that for the guy, so I want her to do that for me, or I want to be able to do that for her, and the woman's just kind of like, whoa, what's happening here? This is not at all, you know, what I signed up for. So often there's just a lot of misinformation, which is really, really troubling. And in the neurodivergent community, I think people might not know necessarily to be able to differentiate what's what. In the neurotypical community, by the way, you get a lot of the same issue as well.
There
But
is.
they
I
really should be
know.
able to see it apart a lot better. At least, they do have that ability. Coming back to Esther, your question, Dr. Hess, is so my specialty, my area really is the betrayal piece of it.
Right.
And I think it's really important to stop and think about it. And something that I hear over and over and over again ad nauseum is, oh, well, it's just pornography. It wasn't a real person. Or somebody will say to one of the women, one of the betrayed wives that I'm working with, oh, but at least he didn't go outside the marriage with someone, at least he didn't go out there.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of put out there that the research shows, ITAP, the Institute for the institution that does all the research and promote and all the creates all the curricula and the treatment models and all that for all these particular addictions. Some of the research they've done shows that the damage that's done on a wife by a husband who has betrayed her, who has engaged in pornography, the damage that's done to her is the same as whether he had gone outside the house and slept with 10 prostitutes. So to the wife, it doesn't actually matter that much what it is. Well, of course it matters. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, because in one situation she might have to go and do an STD test, which I've had to tell partners to do at times, and in one she might not. Outside of that, and that's nothing to be sneezed at. It is a big deal and it's very upsetting to have to do that. But aside from that, the damage from pornography is not that much different. It's almost the same. The difference is negligible for a wife. So coming back to your question, Dr. Hess, about a wife where, whose husband and the object of his betrayal that he's betrayed her for is an AI, literally a fiction of his imagination, right? From her perspective, it's still damaging. Remember that we define betrayal as anything that takes away any emotional or sexual energy from the primary relationship. So if you're...
And the trust.
Right. So anything will be the trust, the emotional time, the sexual energy, right? Any of those things that take away from the primary relationship, which is the husband and the wife, right, is a betrayal, right? So that could be finances too, right? Gamblers and even sex addicts. Also, some of you could be financially betrayed. I've had women like that as well, right? Sure. But I think in this particular scenario, she's been traumatized by a betrayal. There's a very real betrayal. Her husband is spending energy on something that's not her. Now, it might be a doll and it might be an AI, pixels on a screen, but in his mind, he's expending energy on that. He's thinking about it. He might be masturbating to that. He might be engaging with it, thinking about it, talking to it, right? First of all, there's going to be time involved. There's emotional energy involved. There's probably sexual energy involved. And once you start siphoning off all those little pieces, piece by piece, from the main relationship, there's not much left for the primary relationship anymore, right? Some of his sexual energy has now gone elsewhere, so he might be rejecting her, not be interested in her because he's got more excitement elsewhere. I'd be willing to bet you, by the way, that this AI persona is always willing to go to bed with him, doesn't have any emotional needs, is always excited and willing to try all sorts of different creative things in the bedroom. So of course he likes her. Yeah. Wouldn't you? I mean, everyone would, right? So I think for treatment, I would generally, my treatment plan for a couple like that would be, I would separate the treatment of both of them, because they both have very different types of work that needs to be done. She needs to go and sit with someone who's going to validate her, who's going to tell her that she's not crazy for thinking that. Walk through the process of betrayal, the gaslighting that probably happened, the minimizing that probably happened, all the hurt and pain, whatever this trauma brings up in her, because we all carry stuff around and all we need is a trauma. We're one trauma away from, right? So go processing all of that and kind of helping her figure out what she needs in order to feel safe and secure again. Because remember, the trust is eroded now, right? There's no trust left in that relationship. So her trust is eroded. And remember, women get married for security. In this day and age, women don't get married for financial security. Well, we could all support ourselves more or less, right? Sure. Women can have a sperm donor, have a baby on their own. They can do all that. But emotional security, that's what we want. We want that safety with another person, with a guy, right? So if he erodes that, then what is she there for still? So we want to recreate the safety for her and help her nervous system to calm back down again, so she's not, hypervigilant and constantly on alert, and bring her back down to safety for herself, and then create boundaries between her husbands that can maintain the safety. And then somebody needs to sit down with him and talk about what brought you here. How did you end up here? What is it you were looking for? And help him understand that this is not real. And the fact that he's in love or really likes the AI, help him see that that's fiction. It's not real, and help him. And then at some point when he's able to start learning to to express some empathy and remorse, or at the very least empathy to his wife, and to help him understand how this has affected
Understand
her and
and
help her see
right.
that, and then
And
kind of move on from there. Yeah. And there
yeah,
are also just steps, other
no,
steps,
It's
but yeah.
very important what you just said. I think will resonate with a lot of people listening.
yeah. I mean, I think it's to acknowledge you, whatever in the context of the betrayal, to acknowledge eventually the impact that one has on the other.
Hmm.
You know, I think that's, what did your action create?
Hmm.
And to try to understand
Yeah.
why, and then
Yeah.
yeah, and I like
Yeah.
the approach of separation,
Yeah.
where both
Very much.
partners get a chance to express themselves, because it's a different kind of therapy and a different kind of
Yeah.
support
Yeah.
between the two
Hmm.
of them.
I
Naomi,
think,
Yeah.
yeah.
this
Uh,
continues to be such an important uh, an important intimate conversation.
And it's so alive right now. It made me think that back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and maybe into the 60s also, um, women gave men a pass because they were looking at Playboy or
mhm, mhm,
Penthouse.
mhm. Oh, all men do that. Oh, it's no big deal.
Exactly.
Right.
And
It's not.
that women would all talk to their friends, girlfriends about that. And oh, my husband does it too. And as long as he doesn't put it on the coffee table where my kid can see it, then I'm fine with it.
Right.
Because they had a whole cohort that was dealing with it.
Yeah.
Now, this has changed dramatically
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
now it's available online, on a screen, coming to your home at any
Mhm.
time. Children, teens, adults, grandparents' age,
Mhm.
everybody is online and not doing what we think they're doing. And
Yeah.
this is just going to blow up in
It is
everybody's
blowing up.
face. I hear it
Yeah.
from
And the marriages are
young
blowing.
teenagers.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I tell you, Naomi, we would
Yeah.
have you back for a third session, because this can,
Yeah.
it continues to expand and expand. What comes to my mind is that, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm not going to blame COVID, but COVID came at such an interesting, opportune time, and the consequences where
Hmm.
we all had to be on our computers as a way to be their only way to
Yeah.
stay connected.
And school gave you permission, gave children permission, and parents gave children permission. Go,
And
don't
all of
bother
our
me.
socialization, yeah,
Yeah,
all of our socialization turned online as well. So then
abs-
that's not
ab-
that,
abs-
it becomes so close to the
absolutely.
fire,
So we are raising a generation behind a wall.
Hmm.
And I think then when we actually have the opportunity for intimate experiences, we don't have practice, or we have a preference. It's more comfortable to do it in
Hmm.
isolation.
Hmm.
And we also don't check up on each other
Well,
to,
that's yes.
to say, because if everybody's behind a screen,
Hmm.
then, are you, oh, everybody, nobody goes, "Well, what are you
Yeah.
looking
But
at?"
there are
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many parents kids that I've talked to, who have said to me, "I want to tell you something, but I don't want my mother to know." Okay, what do
Yeah.
you want to tell me? This is a teenage age.
Yeah.
Um, Young teenage, saying, I'm talking to a really nice guy online.
Oh,
And that girl doesn't have a clue what this nice guy could be, maybe
right.
anything, because they're not being taught that.
Yeah.
More so now in some schools, but they really aren't being taught
No.
that. Parents
No.
don't know it. And so this one girl told me a story that made my toes curl. And she must have known something was afoot, because she got to me, I felt, right in time. This was an ongoing client,
Wow.
right in time for me to save her.
Right.
And we did.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
And that's just one. Yes,
Terrifying.
please.
It's terrifying. And that touches on internet safety, which is a little bit of a different topic, but
topic,
Yeah.
there's definitely overlap, but it's
but
utterly, it's
there
terrifying.
is
Well,
Terrifying.
look,
tremendous.
I feel like we will probably have you back. I would like to hear, we haven't talked about this, but I think, we get a lot of feedback. So I
Yeah.
want to see what kind of feedback, what kind of
Yeah.
questions,
We are,
and
but there's no doubt.
there's no,
There's no doubt in
yes,
either one of
Yeah.
our minds
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
importance, and I think it speaks to the fact that we as a large community are desperate for information.
that's right.
I think people want to reconnect and sustain communication
Mhm.
and intimacy, and a lot of people just don't know how.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they
Definitely.
see these problems and don't know what to do. So
Right.
we both are so
Yeah.
grateful, Naomi, that you've been back
Right.
to join
And the
us.
way you speak, I just have to say, the calming way that you give the message
Yeah,
is so uh, important,
yeah,
because this is a topic that scares
Yeah.
everyone,
yeah.
and
It's
not
scary and
everybody
it's,
knows how to speak about it
yeah.
with,
Yeah.
the way we do.
And you normalize it, which
Yeah, I
very
think,
much.
yeah, taking the shame out of it and being
Yeah,
able to
Exactly.
use words that are not slang and not, negative. And I think it's very important to differentiate between shameful sexual things and
Hmm.
private sexual
right,
things, right? Things are private, and there's something dignified in the word privacy. Secrecy has a little, can have a shameful connotation. I
right,
think it's really important to bring sexuality back to the privacy realm and take it
Right.
out of the shameful realm, if that makes
right.
sense. And I think it's so important to
This
do
is
that.
what it
Yeah.
feels like I'm listening to you, and I'm remembering how I spoke with my children about exactly those
Yeah,
issues.
it's important.
So
And how
important.
we have to address this in a much larger audience.
Yes.
Yeah,
I want to thank you, Naomi, Dr. Lewis Arif. I always mispronounce your name,
Afriat.
Afriat.
I think.
Excuse
Yes,
me, I'm so
that's
sorry.
okay.
And it's been again our mutual pleasure to have you.
Yes.
I'm Dr. S.T. Hess.
And I'm Dr. Ann Kirsch, and this has been On and Off the
Off the spectrum.
the Spectrum podcast.
Right.
And it has been our delight to meet you in this way, but also to share such important information with everyone out there who may be listening and telling other people this is something important to see.
Yeah,
So we want to
yeah.
encourage our listeners, first off, and our viewers to please contact us and let us know your thoughts regarding both this podcast. If you yourselves think that you would be an important guest that adds to not only this conversation, but to our conversations in general that we've been expanding on this podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. But until that point, we want to wish you all a good and safe night. Naomi, again, thank you for
Yes.
being with us.
Thank you so
It's my
much.
pleasure. Thank you both. It's been great.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
having me. Bye bye.
Bye.